It's January 2021. America has a new president. Britain's under lockdown again. And what's more, the Broadcast Newswrap is back, and we're still your weekly go-to for the biggest and most important TV news. The year's barely begun as President Biden gets his feet under the Oval Office desk, but there's been no let-up in Teleland, and we've got a full show for you after our short break for the Christmas and New Year periods. It's New Year, new faces all round as the SVoDs go on a hiring spree, with Disney Plus and Netflix both raiding the UK market for new roles. Departures in the indie sector lead to discussions around how companies will react to consolidation and the financial pressures of COVID. All of that, plus international editor John Elmes has sat down with drama producer Nicola Shindler as she launches her new production business, Quay Street Productions, and gears up for Channel 4's new Russel T Davis drama, It's a Sin. We've got the exclusive audio for you right here. So, welcome back. It's the first broadcast news wrap of this year, podcast 31. Can you believe it? I'm Jesse Whittock, and I am joined today by John Elmes, broadcast international editor, and Max Goldbart, senior reporter. Max, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Thanks for coming to me first.
There you go.
What a start to the year. It's been 20 days without a podcast, which is a shame.
Yeah, that really makes it position like that was a conscious choice, and then I'm relegated to third position.
It was absolutely to undermine your confidence, John.
Very undermined.
I think the first thing we should do with any podcast is stress the hierarchy of that podcast. And we've set out our stall within a few minutes.
Okay, lots to discuss. Specifically, the SVoDs are already making an unscripted role across Europe. It's quite a big one, quite a damaging one for Channel 4, who are also reeling from the news that Kelly Webb-Lamb, the Deputy Director of Programming, will exit later this year. But not to be outdone, Netflix, who are on the hunt for a new UK documentary team, which we're going to discuss, have recently, in fact just this week, as the story went on broadcast, hired Reba Sharma. She's going to take on a sort of features doc role, and as we say, there will be more British commissioning execs hired in the next couple of weeks. So Max, you were working on those stories. Take us through what's your read on what's happening here?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting start to the year, because I would never, thinking back to previous years, I don't think we would ever have encountered so many interesting job changes right at the very, very top of companies. So Kelly Webb-Lamb at Channel 4, who isn't leaving for a while, I think, but will be off and has announced that she is off. So that's a big blow, and there are some big changes to come there. But regarding the SVoDs, which is really what we're going to talk about for the meat of today, I think it's really fascinating to see them, first of all, in the case of Disney, picking up somebody who's a very traditional broadcasting commissioner, PSB commissioner, in the shape of Sean Doyle. He's basically been blooded through the PSB system. So he worked for BBC in-house in a development role for a long time, did kind of daytime formats development, moved to Channel 5, had a 2 or 3 year career at Channel 5, and most recently has been working for Channel 4 and also commissioning for More 4. So I think that's a really interesting signal that Disney are sending out, that they do want to work with somebody who really knows the system. And from what I understand it, he beat several really quite high profile indie execs who have also been commissioners in the past, who might have had more experience working with huge budgets, but clearly there's something that Disney see in Sean, and he's like, don't get me wrong, hugely highly regarded. I think he's a real people person. I think indies really like working with him, and I think he has those connections. It looks like it's going to be a year where we're going to see more factual and more generally unscripted commissioning from the SVoDs to UK indies, which is exciting, both from Sean Doyle's Disney perspective, and with this new Netflix team. So Netflix is looking to hire 2 documentary series commissioners, both of which will be based in the UK, have a certain degree of autonomy, as you mentioned, Jesse Reva Sharma, who worked for Minnow Films, is joining in a features role. So they've got a big team now. That's I think in the end they'll have about 5 documentary commissioners, which is probably, I don't know, is that roughly equal to Channel 4, ITV, possibly more than ITV. So if we're talking about SVoDs acting as broadcasters, I think this is both companies like Netflix and Disney really planting their flag in the UK sector.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? It's when you think about the roles that these guys who are forsaking the broadcasting, the UK broadcast market, or their broadcasting jobs or their indie jobs, and switching over to the SVoD side. Question, I suppose, for them or for us to sort of investigate is, are those roles changing to become more like PSB roles, or are those people who are considered some of the best in the indie sector or in the commissioning sector, are they being cherry-picked to go over to the SVoD side of things, sort of change their focus and adapt to the Netflix model or to the Disney Plus commissioning model?
I think you're both right, but I think we might be getting too hung up on the idea that we've got a PSB commissioner going to a streamer. That's happening a lot. I mean, it's happening in the States. Traditional broadcasters in the States, execs, are going to streamers because they know how to handle the kind of stuff that takes a commission. Come up with the idea, go through your treatment, hear pitches and stuff, and see what would work for audiences. I think potentially the difference between a Disney Plus audience and a Channel 4 audience is going to be grand, but Channel 4 tend to skew younger, so Disney Plus would also skew younger. I think the idea is interesting because these people have got an eye on really good ideas, and then the kind of things that are associated with Disney Plus. And I've spoken to a couple of independent producers who have produced for Disney Plus and have told me that with this new system that they're going on with concentrating on streaming, Disney as the whole, the parent company concentrating on streaming, is they're going on to really big, really magnify these ideas and blow them up into a Disney Plus show. So you can have a really good idea. The next thing to do is to then Disney Plusify it, go big on budget, go big on talent, go big if it's a specialist factual about science, go big on new scientific methods, that new technology that shows the story in a grand light. So I think these commissioners will have shrewd ideas about what sticks, and then we'll have teams around them to be able to maximize that, especially with the Netflix one. As you mentioned, we'll have a cadre of commissioners, really keen commissioners, working together on what might work best as a feature and what might work best as a TV series. I know that when Kate Townsend joined Netflix, one of the first shows that came around through her and was the sports doc Losers, interplayed cartoon with a traditional documentary of talking heads about sports. Now she's doing features and handing over to whomever these two people are for the streaming TV series. So I think they all will be able to work together quite well. And it does point to things that the Netflix execs and Disney execs have kind of intimated, that the UK outside of America is the territory which is the best place to subsequently grow its international output and platform.
And you've talked me around there a little bit, because I think it can be slightly overstated that the SVoDs are raiding the broadcasters for commissioners, because the reality is, these are all newly created roles and there aren't other SVoD factual commissioners based in the UK. So really, if you're the headhunter, or if you're seeking these people, you really have to look at the broadcasters, or maybe Sky, or you have to look at the big producers, some of whom may have formerly worked as commissioners. But it's not, I suppose, the biggest stretch to think that the majority of people who are going to get jobs working for an SVoD in the UK are probably going to have worked for a broadcaster for worked for a PSB for a significant period of time.
Can
Absolutely.
I also just say to John, great use of the phrase Disney Plusify. I think you might have coined that. I think it's the first time we've heard it. And I do wonder if how much the market will be Disney Plusified going forwards. But I suppose the question here, if it's not about the sort of changing shape, or if we're actually saying that ultimately people are going to SVoDs because they're the people who've actually got the expertise in this, and it's probably not much more than that. I suppose the question is, does the opportunity for indies improve with these guys in position? I mean, we're about 2 months away from the next indie survey coming out. Whilst I expect that survey to be dominated by sort of the industry's response to COVID, we do every year ask the sector to sort of rank the broadcasters and the streamers. Now, last year was the first year that Netflix came top of that chart, the sort of in terms of the strength of the streamers. So it'll be really interesting to see going forward what the indie market is making of all these streamers now that it's starting to formulate into a proper sector.
Someone speaking to me over Christmas said, Netflix is almost like the network TV of a few years ago. So the new streamers are the new players, and Netflix is now the legacy media, even though it is completely trailblazing. So it is setting itself up as a kind of holistic entity, as a PSB commissioner and producer, and as we know, film distributor and streaming service.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Like, Netflix is by no means like a new player, is it? And I think, like, looking at there's not like an infinite pie in terms of how many ideas indies can pitch and how many are going to get green lit. So I don't think PSBs will be like quaking in their boots, but I think there will be a kind of small fear that if people like Sean Doyle and whoever's going to get these Netflix jobs continue to move over, then the kind of the more bread and butter indies that make shows regularly for PSBs will start hedging their bets more and going over to the streamers more. And at the moment, like John, you were just talking about volume. The SVoD commissioning volume remains very small in the UK, and is constantly an argument used by the PSBs for the fact that they're just streets apart from each other. The BBC commissions nigh on 10,000 hours worth of content from UK indies a year, and Netflix commissions 200 or something like that. I'm not 100% on those figures. If that only changes a little bit, that's fine. But like the relationships with indies from these traditional PSB commissioners who are moving across, I think there's a chance that SVoDs will find in a few months' time, the PSBs will find in a few months' time that they're maybe not quite getting the same ideas that they were before, or if they're losing a few of those relationships. And I don't think they'll be too happy about that.
Well, those weren't the only sort of people moves that we've reported on in the last few days. Also seen some quite big indie departures. Murray Ferguson is leaving Clerkenwell Films, the drama producer. He's been there since its inception, and he exits as BBC Studios, takes full control of Clerkenwell and consolidates that business into its broader drama division. And Tanya Shaw is also leaving Shine, so that's a really big one in the unscripted and factual entertainment market. Shine TV being the producer behind the MasterChef brands and other top shows for PSBs.
I understand, or Broadcast understands, that the MD role is going to remain, and Shine is going to stay a standalone label for the time being. For the foreseeable future. I do think, I think the departures, as we've alluded to, are kind of signs of movement in the industry as wider, not taking these in isolation. We're not saying that their departures are expressive of the whole industry, but I think there is obviously going to be more fluctuation because of uncertainties over the coronavirus, and obviously, as both of you have said, the consolidation of companies generally points to departures in complementary roles. I think where Shine is a very defined in terms of what it produces. I think it's got a clear remit. So I think someone to steer that with the creative team, I think it's definitely something that is to keep an eye on. If more of these departures continue, we'll see that it's definitely part of a trend.
The financial picture for absolutely every company working in British television a year ago was better than it is now, right? There's been an unprecedented year of just the strangest cultural and social problems, and for a business like broadcasting, which is sort of cyclical and based on sort of personal relationships and interaction and all of these sorts of things, it really just makes it a very strange place at the moment. And financially, that is felt by the fact that the tariffs have gone down, that commissioning levels have dropped. We've got data from our commissioning index and our program index that shows that the numbers are down. It's stark. It's there. Now we should move on to our interview for the day. Something maybe slightly more upbeat than talking about restructuring and financial difficulty. John, you've been talking to Nicola Shindler, formerly of Red Production Company, now has just launched her own production company, Quay Street Productions.
Nicola, it's great to hear about Quay Street, a very personal production company. And
the first interview as well. So it's the first time I properly talked about it formally outside of deciding what it is.
Oh, I like this. I feel very honoured. Just quickly take me through on what is Quay Street Productions looking like?
For me, Quay Street was always a place, because I went to work there when I was the script head John Cracker. And that's when I first started working there. And it was a place of ultimate creativity. So you just felt that there was ambition in the air, and there were people who wanted to make programs, and there was an excitement about content, and that's what I want to replicate, really. So it isn't just nostalgia, it's genuine. It's one of the few buildings, and I'm not in that building, but it is one of the few buildings that I've walked into where you just thought, I want to make something. Absolutely.
Just quickly, what will the operation look like? Is it just you in the office by yourself? Have you got plans to staff up?
I have, yeah. So I am very much an independent production company who are backed by ITV Studios. So I am, it's going to feel like, similar to the beginnings of Red, it's going to feel something that I'm setting up, something that I'm going to bring other people to. And yes, I've started to talk with people. There are, a few development people who are going to start quite soon, different people from different areas, different levels of experience. And then I want to be in production as soon as I can and then grow the company. I'm a small setup at the moment, so I'm going to see how it goes. But also I'm working with a lot of the backroom staff at ITV. So, they're very supportive, and they're going to be there for any kind of more business-related conversations that I'm going to have. And then I get to run it as an indie. But I want their expertise, I want their knowledge. I really enjoyed my meetings with Julian Bellamy. I think what he brings in terms of knowledge about both the international market as well as the national market is really useful to me. So I'm really looking forward to working with them, alongside them.
Sure. And is that in terms of your independence, does that involve that you have kind of final say over the projects you pursue? I mean, how much is the involvement on the creative input, as it were?
No involvement. No, I have say over what we should be making and what we will make, and obviously with my team, but not with ITV. That's something that they're happy to leave with me, and they value my experience in that, and they're looking forward to what I bring.
Yeah, brilliant. Does ITV, the broadcaster, get first dibs on any productions, or is it
Not formally, no. So I make a lot of shows for ITV anyway, and so I have a really good relationship there, and I want to develop that relationship. There's no pressure to go to ITV first. I'll go whichever broadcaster suits the project. There's no first look deal. There's nothing formalised. But like I said, I enjoy working with Polly, and I enjoy working for ITV. So that isn't an issue for me. I will be looking to develop for them, but I'll be also looking to develop for every other channel.
Sure. Before you left Red and went to set up Quay Street, you kind of packed in a lot of work beforehand, and obviously still have a few dramas coming out in the near future with which you're still execing because of part of Red. There doesn't seem to be a thread between them or anything. So kind of just give me a sense of what kind of projects you're pursuing in terms of where you're reaching your development, who you're working with, that kind of thing?
Well, I started last week, so obviously I'm just starting now. But I am going to do similar to what I did at Red, in that I want to develop across the spectrum. I want to make some very mainstream dramas, and I want to make some dramas which could only be on Channel 4, and then I want to make dramas which feel like they need to stream on Netflix. So I'm looking for all those different kind of projects. For me, it's about the stories and finding the really good stories, and I want to make sure that I'm telling contemporary, exciting, kind of provocative stories which make people sit up and pay attention. That's the things that make me passionate, and they can be anything from, you know, a show that is for an older generation to a show that can be a YA kind of content. It's just about the storytelling.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, if there's a thread, it's that I've moved from one company to the other, and I'm going to bring that passion for that kind of storytelling. I also want to make sure that I put the writers at the centre of every project, which is something I always wanted to do at Red. You know, bring those voices to the fore, make sure that we're listening to a lot of authored voices, make sure that we are telling stories from a diverse range of people.
For sure. Your relationship with Russel T Davis is about that in the drama world. Do you feel that you want to bring those people that you've been working with a lot over the past 20 odd years into the Quay Street fold?
Well, I never want to stop working with those writers. I definitely want to carry on working with those people because they're exceptional writers and they're brilliant at what they do, and they have that kind of story that I'm talking about, the kind of story that is so entertaining but that means something at the same time. So yes, I want to keep working with them. I would never presume that they'll just follow me anywhere, and I don't think they will, and I wouldn't want that. I have to earn their respect, and I have to earn them wanting to work with me. So I have to work very hard on the shows that they give me, and then make sure that they, you know, hope that they come to me with the next one.
If we just step back into something that I've wanted to ask, because I don't think it was necessarily as much communicated in the original release. What was suddenly the change to step away and do something new, so to carve out a new label in a market that, let's face it, is quite saturated with drama labels, and drama is obviously difficult? What was the thrust behind going on a new path with Quay Street?
Well, it just felt time for me to do something new. So I'd been at Red for 21 years, and it felt like I had an opportunity to think about doing something new, and I wanted that fresh start. It's really hard to say. It's just one of those things where you get to a point where you think, I need to try something new now.
Yeah. Obviously, you've got the kind of track record already, so setting up a new venture doesn't seem as much of a risk for yourself or ITV Studios. You know, what is your take on the drama landscape at the moment?
I think it feels risky to me, by the way, and that's one of the things I wanted to do. It feels like I'm doing something risky. It feels like a new start. It feels like I'm taking a step into the unknown because I was at Red for so long. I think it's a really exciting market right now because there's so much drama. Your drama has to be exceptional, and I really like that. So you're sitting with broadcasters, and every one of them is saying, what makes this really original? What makes this the next groundbreaking drama? What makes this stand out? No one is looking for, can it be a combination of the last two hits that we've had? Which is, you know, for a time there was that feel within the industry. So I think it feels really invigorated because of the amount of competition. I think COVID hasn't done anything positive for anyone, really. I don't think it's opened up the field. I think it's made it more difficult because there'll be less money for some time, and because of the hiatus for when everyone stops shooting, there'll be less slots for some time as well. Mm-hmm. So I just think it actually makes it more difficult for everyone. Sure. But COVID aside, I think it's a really good time, and I think the people who are, you know, in charge of all the different broadcasters are really ambitious in a good way, not in not in an aggressive way, in a we want to make the best we can. And that hasn't always been the case, but for a producer that's an extraordinary time to be in. Yeah.
Are you in a position to say any projects that you're working on at the moment for Quay Street?
No, there's nothing that I'm ready to announce. There's some projects that I've had in mind. There are some writers that I know I want to go to straight away. There are some IPs that I'm looking at straight away. But I think it'll be a few weeks before I can kind of firmly say exactly what I'm doing next.
Sure. And just quickly, is as well as kind of infrastructure, is ITV Studios helping fund development as well for the kind of the conversations you're working with? And Yes.
So I will have development. I will have money to go out there and work with the people that I want to work with, which is great. And it's a brilliant place to be in. But for me, the key thing is to look at which writers have got those voices and which writers I think would fit in with the new team, and then to try and nurture from there.
Sure, absolutely. Do you feel that there are any issues that currently exist in the drama world that you see continually that you feel need addressing, and that hopefully with this fresh start you can, put your marker down to help that along, help solve those issues, in the grand scheme of things?
I think the biggest issue right now for all of us, and it's the same for every drama production company, is budgets and crew. And there is a real issue, and I don't think me saying that I'm going to do things differently will make an iota of difference, because there are now set rates for crews, set rates for actors. Budgets are rising and rising in a way that doesn't necessarily always end up on screen. And I think production companies are finding it really hard to manage that spend and that kind of budget increase that's happening year on year or month on month. It just makes it quite difficult to make the same dramas that we were looking at making 2 years ago. And then the amount of production makes it incredibly difficult to find crew, experienced crew for every role on a production. And it's not everyone's willing to take risks, and I think we should take risks on new talent. But there are some productions when, there is no one available who's ever done the job before. And I know that every production company is finding the same thing, and it's making it just difficult. But there are a group of production heads of production executives who are the unsung heroes in drama, who are gathering together all the time, who are trying to manage this, who are working through so that every company can carry on, so productions can happen. But it's always going to be difficult. The least ambitious show in the world right now is very difficult to make.
I'm going to move on to arguably the one of the finest sections in British podcasting at the moment, the What We've Been Watching segment of the Broadcast Newswrap. And I'm going to start with you, John. What has been on the box in the Elmes household?
Well, I came to it a week late, but I'm glad I did. But I watched the Pembrokeshire Murders from ITV, and I binged it in an evening. I sat down, I watched 3 episodes back to back, and then I watched the true crime documentary on the game show killer afterwards. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a great show. Really, really, actually, probably the best of the true crime dramas I've seen, because it still had a bit of jeopardy. Obviously, these true crime dramas depend on what the story is, and this one happened to have an element of jeopardy, a race against time, so it added a dimension to the actual true crime element. But it was brilliant, and off the back of that, it's so dependent on forensics and basically kind of pinning the crimes of a killer based on forensics, that I then started Red Productions Traces, which is it was originally on Alibi, but it's been acquired by the BBC. And I was like, I'm just going to go on a true crime forensics drama glut. So I'm going through Traces. I'm not going to try and compare them; they're completely different. But if anyone out there is wanting to watch a drama, do worse, much worse than watching Pembrokeshire Murders. It's phenomenal.
You've gone deeply down the true crime rabbit hole, and it sounds like you're not the only one. I think the consolidated numbers for Pembrokeshire are something like 11.2 million, which is one of ITV's biggest dramas in a very long time.
Almost precisely the opposite, Jesse. I've been on RuPaul's Drag Race UK Series 2. It launches on BBC iPlayer on a Thursday, and then you can watch it whenever you want. I'm super impressed. I'm also at this point going to push my interview with World of Wonder, the creators of Drag Race. We sat down last week and had a really interesting interview about why the show has only very recently achieved mainstream success outside of the US. But Drag Race Series 2 started really, really well. What I really like about it, when you're watching a kind of reality entertainment show, you watch the first episode and you tend to be a bit frustrated that you haven't got to know the characters the way you did in the series before. Whereas I think because the format of Drag Race is so well defined, you just immediately start connecting with the characters. And after like one episode, I already just kind of felt like I knew them as well as I did with the previous clique, which I think is like a masterstroke. Like, it's very, very difficult to create that so quickly. Drag Race has been going for almost 15 years. for most of that time in the US, and you can just tell that they've hit this format. They don't have to tweak it too far, but they just know how to get people coming back to watch it, and it's just injected with just so much heart. Like, it's just a really lovely thing to watch, and very funny as well. I continue to love Graham Norton. He's hilarious. He does the guest judging.
I was going through The Serpent, so BBC One's drama, which is it probably couldn't be further from RuPaul. Really, it's a crazy.
Or the
story.
Pembrokeshire murders. Quite far from the Pembrokeshire murders.
No, I mean only in the sense that it's sort of true crime, in the sense that this guy Charles Sobraj is a real guy, and it's the story of how effectively he conned and killed hippies and sort of folk who were out in Asia trying to find themselves in the 60s and 70s. It's an absolutely wild story. Jenna Coleman is a co-star in it. She's brilliant. She's really, really good. She plays a French Canadian, and her accent is flawless.
Really good. It's good, isn't it? Her accent.
Yeah, it's very good. And I think Tahir Rahim, who plays the serpent himself, is absolutely terrifying. There's real Hannibal Lecter kind of vibes. So,
just quickly before we go, can I just plug Keith Allen's performance in the Pembrokeshire Murders? I'm not going to say any more, but Keith Allen in Pembrokeshire Murders is phenomenal.
He'll thank you for that, John. We're running out of time. So Max, John, thank you for joining me today. This is the first Broadcast Newswrap of the year.
It's a pleasure.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for listening to the first Newswrap of 2021. I've been Broadcast Insight Editor Jesse Whittock, and you've been listening to Quay Street Productions founder Nicola Shindler and Max Goldbart and John Elmes from the Broadcast editorial team. Incredibly, it's our 31st podcast since launching at the height of the pandemic in summer last year. So it's a good time to say thank you to all of the regular listeners, and hello to those of you who've just found us. You can listen to all previous episodes on Spotify and iTunes, or via the website www.broadcastnow.co.uk.